What happens when one of Hollywood's most iconic action legends walks into a daytime talk show expecting a friendly chat, and instead sparks one of the most jaw-dropping confrontations television has ever seen? Stay with me, because what unfolded next stunned the audience, silenced the studio, and ended with a powerful host walking off her own show in disbelief. This moment sent shockwaves through daytime TV, and people are still talking about it. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments, because this story only gets more intense as it goes on. The View studio buzzed with its usual pre-show energy. The lights were bright, the cameras were ready, and the audience had settled in for what everyone assumed would be a routine celebrity appearance. At the table sat Joy Behar, flipping through her notes with that familiar look, the one she wore when she sensed an opportunity to press a guest hard. That day's featured guest was none other than Harrison Ford, booked to promote his latest film. Producers expected smooth sailing, a few laughs, a few movie clips, and the usual applause. But no one in that room could have predicted what was about to unfold. Then came the introduction. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the legendary Harrison Ford," Whoopi Goldberg announced. The crowd erupted. Ford walked onto the set with his signature laid-back confidence, offering a casual wave as he took his seat across from the panel. His face carried that unmistakable half-smile, the same one audiences had loved for decades on screens big and small. "Harrison, welcome back to The View," Sarah Haynes said warmly. "It's always a pleasure to have you here." "Thanks for having me," Ford replied, his gravelly voice instantly recognizable. He leaned back slightly and added with a grin, "Although I'll admit, sitting at this table always makes me a little nervous. You ladies have a reputation for asking tough questions." The audience laughed. But then, something shifted. Joy Behar leaned forward, her eyes sharp, a glint of anticipation flashing across her face. And here's where everything changed. "Speaking of tough questions," Joy said, locking eyes with Ford, "I have to ask about your comments on environmental activism. You're very outspoken about climate change, yet you own multiple aircraft and fly them regularly. Don't you think that's a bit hypocritical?" The smile faded from Ford's face. His jaw tightened, just slightly, enough for the cameras to catch it. "Well, Joy," he replied calmly, "that's a fair question, but it's more complex than you're making it. I use those aircraft for conservation work, transporting researchers and supplies to remote areas where environmental monitoring is happening." A pause. Then Joy waved him off dismissively. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "That's what every wealthy celebrity says when they're called out for their carbon footprint. You're telling me Harrison Ford, with all his resources, couldn't find a more environmentally friendly way to help?" You could feel the temperature drop in the studio. One co-host shifted uncomfortably. Another widened her eyes. This wasn't playful debate anymore. This was something else entirely. Ford straightened in his chair, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a harder edge. "Actually, Joy," he said firmly, "I've been doing conservation work for over 30 years. I've funded countless projects. I've shown up. And yes, sometimes that means getting to places where there are no roads and no commercial flights. I've put my money where my mouth is," he paused. "But I do appreciate your concern for my carbon footprint." Joy laughed, but it wasn't friendly, it was sharp. "I'm not concerned," she fired back. "I'm calling you out. You Hollywood types are all the same, preaching about saving the planet while living in mansions and flying private jets. It's virtue signaling, plain and simple." The audience went completely silent. Even Whoopi Goldberg, usually the calm center of the table, looked stunned. And then Harrison Ford's expression changed entirely. His eyes went cold. "I think you have me confused with someone else," he said quietly, every word deliberate. "I don't live in a mansion. I live on a ranch in Wyoming, where I do real conservation work. I don't fly private jets for fun. I use aircraft as tools." Then he leaned forward. But more importantly, he continued, I don't come on television shows to attack people I've never met and know nothing about. Joy's face flushed red, and instead of backing down, she doubled down. I've been in this business longer than most people have been alive, Harrison, she snapped. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And what I'm talking about is hypocrisy. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ford answered, quietly but with devastating precision. No, he said. What you're talking about is making assumptions and attacking someone based on them. That's not journalism. A beat. That's just mean-spirited. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Joy opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she had no immediate response. The other hosts stared at the table, the floor, anywhere but the tension unfolding in front of them. And as the cameras kept rolling, it became painfully clear. This interview had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Joy finally sputtered, trying to regain control. I'm asking legitimate questions about environmental responsibility, she snapped. And if you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't come on talk shows. Ford leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same focused intensity audiences once watched as he interrogated villains on screen. His calm was almost unsettling. I can handle tough questions just fine, Joy, he said evenly. What I have trouble with is rudeness disguised as journalism. There's a difference between asking hard questions and being deliberately hostile. Hostile? Joy's voice shot up an octave. You think I'm being hostile? I'm being real. I'm being honest. Something this town doesn't see nearly enough of. Being real, Ford repeated slowly, as if weighing the phrase. Is that what you call interrupting your guest? Making accusations without facts? Acting like you have a personal grudge against someone you've never even met? By now, the audience was completely locked in, watching the verbal clash with the kind of fascination reserved for train wrecks you can't look away from. Joy's face had gone from red to nearly purple, her hands clenched tightly against the table. I don't have a grudge against you, she shot back through gritted teeth. I have a problem with celebrities who lecture the rest of us while living completely different lives. And I have a problem, Ford replied calmly, with talk show hosts who think attacking their guests counts as entertainment. The silence that followed was deafening. You could practically hear the air hum as the weight of his words settled over the table. Joy's eyes flashed. Dangerous now. Attack? She hissed. You think this is an attack? You clearly don't know what real journalism looks like, Harrison. Maybe you've been in Hollywood so long you're used to everyone kissing your feet and telling you how wonderful you are. Ford raised an eyebrow, a flicker of what might have been amusement passing through his eyes. Actually, Joy, he said, I've been doing interviews for over 40 years. I know the difference between tough journalism and someone just looking for a fight. And right now, you're looking for a fight. I'm looking for honesty, Joy shot back, her voice growing shriller by the second. Something that seems to disappear the moment celebrities sit down at this table. You want to talk about your little conservation work? Fine. Let's talk about how much fuel those planes of yours burn. Joy, Whoopi finally tried to interject, clearly sensing the situation spiraling. No, Joy cut her off without even turning her head. I'm not done. She turned back to Ford, eyes locked. Harrison, how much fuel does one of your aircraft burn in a single flight? Do you even know? Do you even care? Ford studied her for a long moment before answering. A Cessna 180 burns about 12 gallons an hour, he said calmly. My larger aircraft, which I use for longer conservation missions, burns more. But it also allows me to transport equipment and personnel to areas that would otherwise be completely inaccessible. Something tells me, though, you're not really interested in the details. Oh, I'm very interested, Joy replied with a thin, nasty smile. 12 gallons an hour. That's more than most people use in their cars in a week. And yet, you're out here lecturing everyone about environmental responsibility. I'm not lecturing anyone, Ford said evenly. I support conservation organizations. I fund research. And yes, sometimes that work requires transportation. Then he paused. But I am curious, Joy, he added. What's your environmental footprint? How did you get to work today? The question landed like a slap. Joy blinked, clearly caught off guard. That's not the point, she stammered. I'm not the one going around giving speeches about climate change. Actually, Ford said with the faintest smile, that's exactly the point. The studio froze. You're criticizing me for something you admit you don't hold yourself accountable for. That sounds a lot like real hypocrisy. Joy's face twisted with rage. Don't you dare turn this around on me, she snapped. I'm not the one pretending to be some environmental saint while burning fossil fuels like there's no tomorrow. Environmental saint? Ford replied calmly, though there was unmistakable steel beneath his voice. Joy, I've never claimed to be perfect. I've never claimed to be a saint. I'm just someone who cares, and who puts real time and real money into conservation. He leaned forward slightly. But you seem determined to paint me as the villain simply because I use tools to do that work. Joy scoffed, shaking her head. Tools? She repeated. And in that single word, it was clear this confrontation was far from over. Joy let out a bitter laugh. Oh, is that what we're calling private aircraft now? She sneered. Tools? A saw is a tool, Ford replied patiently. A hammer is a tool. A vehicle is a tool. An aircraft is a tool. They're all means to accomplish a task. The real question is whether the task is worth the cost. He paused, letting the words settle. In my case, the work I do has helped protect hundreds of thousands of acres of wilderness and countless species. I'm comfortable with that math. I'm comfortable with that math, Joy repeated mockingly. How convenient. I suppose it's easy to be comfortable when you can afford to be. At this point, the tension was impossible to ignore. The other host looked visibly distressed. Sarah Haynes fidgeted nervously with her cards. Sonny Hostin stared down at the table. Even Whoopi Goldberg, usually the steady hand in moments like this, seemed unsure how to rein things back in. And then, Harrison Ford's patience finally cracked. You know what, Joy? He said, his voice firm now. I came here to talk about a movie. I came here to have a thoughtful conversation about work I care deeply about. I did not come here to be ambushed by someone who seems to have a personal vendetta against people who actually try to make a difference. Vendetta? Joy shot back, her voice wavering slightly. You think this is personal? This isn't personal. I know this is principle. This is about calling out the hypocrisy that runs rampant in Hollywood. No, Ford said without hesitation. This is personal. This is you unloading your frustrations on someone who's done nothing to deserve it. And frankly, it's beneath the dignity of this show. And everyone else at this table. The cameras caught the exact moment Joy's composure shattered. Her face drained white, then flushed red, then went pale again. When she spoke, her voice trembled with barely restrained fury. How dare you, she whispered. How dare you come into my workplace and lecture me about dignity? You don't know me. You don't know what I've accomplished. You don't know anything about what I've done for this industry. You're right, Ford said calmly. I don't know you personally, but I know what I've seen here today. And what I've seen is a host invite a guest onto her show and then spend the entire time trying to humiliate him. He let that sink in. That's not the behavior of someone who respects this industry or this show. And that was the breaking point. Joy shot up from her chair so abruptly it rolled backward into the set behind her. That's it, she shouted, her voice echoing through the studio. I don't have to sit here and listen to this from some washed-up action star who thinks he's better than everyone else. The audience gasped audibly. Ford stayed seated, but his expression hardened. Washed up? He repeated slowly. Well, that's certainly professional. Professional? Joy exploded, waving her arms wildly now, all television polish gone. You want professional? Professional would be admitting you're a hypocrite instead of sitting there pretending you're some environmental hero while burning more fuel in a month than most people use in a year. Joy? Whoopi cut in urgently. Maybe I should what? Joy snapped, spinning toward her. Maybe I should just sit here and let him insult me on my own show? Pretend everything's fine while he talks down to me like I'm an amateur? That's when Harrison Ford finally stood. At full height, his presence commanded the room. Nobody is talking down to you, Joy, he said evenly. But if you can't have a civil conversation with your guests, maybe you should reconsider whether this is the right job for you. The words hit like a punch. Joy's face cycled through shock, rage, humiliation, and then something close to panic. Reconsider whether this is the right job for me? She shrieked. I've been doing this job since before you knew what a talk show was. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, Nobel Prize winners. I don't need some aging movie star telling me how to do my job. Ford didn't raise his voice. He didn't flinch. Then maybe, he said calmly, you should start acting like someone who's interviewed presidents, instead of someone having a public meltdown on live television. The studio erupted into chaos. Joy's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Only incoherent sputtering. Sarah Haynes buried her face in her hands. Sunny Hostin stared in open horror as her colleague unraveled in real time. And in that moment, it was clear to everyone watching. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was a collapse, broadcast live to millions. Public meltdown? Joy croaked, her voice cracking. You think this is a meltdown? You haven't seen anything yet. She leaned forward, eyes blazing. You come on here with your holier-than-thou attitude, acting like some kind of saint because you fly around in your little airplanes pretending to save the world. Joy, please. Whoopi tried again, her voice strained, but it was too late. No, Whoopi, Joy snarled, never breaking eye contact with Ford. This man needs to hear what I really think about his fake environmental activism and his condescending attitude. The studio felt frozen in time. You want to know what I think, Harrison? Joy continued. I think you're a fraud. I think this whole conservation thing is just a publicity stunt to help you sleep better at night while enjoying your privileged lifestyle. Ford tilted his head slightly, studying her. Not angrily, but with quiet intensity. You know what's interesting, Joy? He said calmly. In all of this, you haven't asked a single question about the actual work I do. You haven't shown any interest in the organizations I support or the projects I've funded. You've just made assumption after assumption based on your own biases. Biases? Joy shrieked, her voice reaching an almost painful pitch. My biases? You're the one sitting there acting like you're above answering legitimate questions about your hypocrisy. I answered every question you asked, Ford replied softly. I gave you real numbers. I explained my work. I tried to have an honest conversation, but you weren't interested in answers. You wanted a target, and today that target happened to be me. Joy was shaking now, whether from rage or something deeper, no one could tell. You think you're so smart? She snapped. You think you can come on my show and make me look bad? Joy, Ford said gently, and for the first time there was real concern in his voice. You're doing that yourself. I'm just sitting here trying to talk. That was the breaking point. Joy let out a sound that was half scream, half sob, and pointed a trembling finger at him. I don't have to take this. I don't have to sit here and be insulted by some washed-up has-been who thinks he's better than everyone else because he can afford to play environmental warrior. Joy, Whoopi pleaded, rising from her chair. Maybe we should take a break. No, Joy shouted. No break. I'm done. I'm done with this interview. I'm done with this disrespectful guest. And I'm done with this show. The studio went completely silent, except for Joy's heavy, uneven breathing. You're done with the show? Sarah Haynes asked quietly, hoping she'd misheard. Yes, Joy declared, her voice now frantic and unsteady. I quit. I'm not going to sit here and be treated like this on my own show. If this is the kind of guest we're booking, if this is the respect I get after decades in this business, then I'm out. She ripped the microphone from her jacket, the feedback screeching through the studio and making everyone flinch. Find yourself another host, she shouted. Someone who's willing to tolerate arrogant celebrities who think they can humiliate the people who made them famous. Joy, please, Whoopi begged. Let's just... No, Joy snapped, slamming the microphone onto the table. 30 years in this business, and this is what I get. That's when Ford finally spoke again. Joy, he said calmly, his voice cutting through the chaos. I never disrespected you. I disagreed with you. I defended myself when you attacked me. Those are not the same things. He paused. And if you can't tell the difference, then maybe this really isn't the right job for you. The words landed like a physical blow. Joy stood there for a moment, swaying slightly, her face cycling through shock, fury, and humiliation. Then, without saying another word, she turned and walked off the set, her footsteps echoing through the stunned silence of the studio. The camera lingered on the remaining hosts, frozen in disbelief. Ford slowly sat back down, straightening his jacket as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. Well, Whoopi finally said, barely above a whisper, "This is live television." Ford looked directly into the camera, calm and composed. "I want to apologize to the viewers for what just happened," he said. "That wasn't my intention. I came here to talk about my work and clear up a few misconceptions. I hope people focus on the real conservation efforts happening around the world, not personal conflicts." Sarah Haynes nodded quietly. "Thank you for remaining professional through all of that, Harrison." Ford offered a faint smile. "Sometimes the most professional thing you can do is tell the truth, and let people decide what they've seen." And just like that, one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history came to an end, with Harrison Ford seated calmly at the table, and Joy Behar walking off her own show as millions watched in disbelief. Now it's your turn. What do you think of how Harrison Ford handled this moment? Was he too harsh? Or did Joy finally face consequences for years of aggressive interviews? Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments below.